Picture this. You're a servant in the Palace of Versailles in 1682, and you've just been assigned to the most prestigious position imaginable, personal attendant to the Sun King himself, Louis XIV. Your heart swells with pride as you're led through gilded corridors lined with priceless tapestries and mirrors that reflect infinite luxury. Then you're handed a golden chamber pot and told your primary duty is to follow His Majesty around, waiting for nature to call. The glamorous image of royal service shatters as you realize you're essentially a professional toilet assistant to the most powerful man in Europe. What you're about to discover isn't just another tale of royal excess. It's the story of how the most basic human need became the most closely guarded secret of the aristocracy. Behind every golden throne and every crown jewel lies a truth so disgusting, so fundamentally human, that centuries of historians have politely looked the other way. But today, we're diving headfirst into the bowels of royal history to uncover the revolting reality of how kings and queens handled their most private moments. Before we flush away the myths and legends to reveal these forgotten truths, if you enjoy learning about the hidden realities behind history's most glamorous facades, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content like this. And please comment below to let me know where you're listening from. I find it incredible that we're exploring these ancient mysteries together from different parts of the world, connected across time and space by our shared fascination with the secrets history tried to bury. The story I'm about to tell you spans continents and centuries, from the marble halls of ancient Rome to the perfumed chambers of French palaces. It's a story that reveals how the most basic biological function became a theater of power, politics, and unimaginable extravagance. You'll discover why some monarchs held court while sitting on their toilets, how royal bathroom habits sparked international diplomatic incidents, and why the wrong choice of toilet paper once nearly caused a revolution. But here's what makes this story truly fascinating. I've spent months digging through archives, palace records, and servants' diaries that most people will never see. The research for this video took me through documents written in Latin, French, and German, many of them so explicit that they were deliberately hidden away by embarrassed historians. What I found was evidence of bathroom practices so bizarre, so elaborate, and sometimes so dangerous that they make modern luxury seem primitive by comparison. And trust me, by the end of this series, you'll never look at a royal portrait the same way again. Because while those painted monarchs stare down at you with dignity and grace, you'll know the revolting truth about what was happening just outside the frame. Let's begin our journey in ancient Rome, where the very concept of royal toilet privilege was born in the most unexpected way. The year is 37 AD, and Caligula has just become emperor. Within months, he's already showing signs of the madness that will define his reign. But it's not his political cruelty that first alerts the palace staff to his instability. It's his bathroom behavior. You see, Caligula doesn't just use his toilet for its intended purpose. He holds audiences there. Important senators, foreign dignitaries, and military commanders are summoned to discuss matters of state while the emperor sits on his marble throne, often for hours at a time. At first, courtiers assume this is some new form of power play, a way to humiliate his subjects by forcing them to conduct business in such degrading circumstances. But the reality is far more disturbing. Palace physicians later reveal in secret correspondence that Caligula suffers from chronic digestive problems, likely caused by poisoning attempts that keep him confined to his toilet for most of the day. Rather than appear weak by canceling appointments, he simply moves his entire court to the bathroom. The marble walls echo with discussions of military campaigns and tax policy, while the air fills with scents that no amount of expensive incense can mask. The servants assigned to attend these toilet audiences develop what they call the ability to maintain perfect composure while breathing through their mouths. One servant's diary, discovered in the 19th century and quickly hidden away, describes the horror of having to take dictation for imperial decrees while kneeling beside the emperor's toilet, trying not to listen to the sounds and smells of royal digestion. But Caligula's toilet court is just the beginning. What happens next establishes a precedent that will haunt European royalty for centuries. When Caligula is assassinated in 41 AD, his successor Claudius inherits not just the throne, but the imperial bathroom protocols. And Claudius, despite being more rational than his predecessor, discovers something troubling. The toilet audiences have become incredibly effective. Think about it from a political perspective. When you're sitting on a toilet, you're literally at your most vulnerable. You can't suddenly stand up and storm out if you don't like what you're hearing. You're trapped, exposed, dependent on others for the most basic assistance. For Claudius, this becomes the perfect environment for extracting confessions, forcing agreements, and conducting negotiations where the other party can't easily refuse or deceive him. The Roman toilet interrogation becomes so notorious that foreign ambassadors begin requesting alternative meeting arrangements. But Claudius refuses. In his mind, if someone isn't willing to discuss business while he handles his business, they're not truly committed to the relationship. The practice becomes so institutionalized that special protocols develop around. Servants learn to recognize different types of imperial digestive sounds and their political implications. A rumbling stomach means postpone any bad news. Certain gastric episodes signal that the emperor is in a mood for generous decision-making. The most disturbing aspect isn't the smell or the sounds. It's how the practice transforms the people around it. Senators who once commanded legions and governed provinces find themselves analyzing the emperor's bowel movements for political insights. Military commanders develop expertise in reading digestive patterns to time their requests for troop reinforcements. The entire Roman political system begins revolving around one man's bathroom schedule. Palace architects are commissioned to design increasingly elaborate toilet chambers that can accommodate these audiences. They install special ventilation systems, create separate entrances for different ranks of visitors, and develop innovative plumbing that can handle the increased usage. The emperor's toilet becomes more luxurious than most citizens' entire homes, with heated floors, scented waters, and silk cushions that are replaced after every use. But the true horror emerges when we examine the psychological impact on the emperor himself. Contemporary accounts suggest that Claudius becomes obsessed with his digestive processes, viewing them as connected to his imperial power. He begins timing his bathroom visits to coincide with important decisions, believing that his body's natural rhythms are somehow connected to divine guidance. Palace physicians are required to maintain detailed logs of his digestive schedule, creating what might be history's first government-sponsored bathroom diary. The practice spreads beyond the emperor to other members of the imperial family. Claudius's wife Messalina begins holding her own toilet audiences, primarily for dealing with what she calls women's business, managing the complex social hierarchies of Roman aristocratic wives. Her bathroom becomes a center of gossip, blackmail, and political intrigue that rivals the emperor's own toilet court. When news of these Roman toilet practices reaches other kingdoms, the reactions range from horror to fascination. Egyptian pharaohs, who have their own elaborate bathroom rituals, send spies to Rome specifically to gather intelligence on imperial toilets. Germanic tribal leaders, still using primitive outdoor facilities, struggle to understand how bathroom behavior could become a tool of statecraft. The Roman toilet empire reaches its peak under Nero, who takes the concept to its logical extreme. Not content with simple audiences, Nero begins staging elaborate theatrical performances in specially constructed bathroom amphitheaters. These toilet spectacles combine his love of performance art with the practical necessity of spending long hours dealing with digestive issues caused by his notorious excess in food and drink. Picture the scene. Hundreds of Rome's elite seated in marble tiers around a sidebar central toilet stage, watching their emperor perform dramatic monologues while attending to his bodily functions. Musicians play in the background, poets recite verses about the beauty of natural processes, and slaves scatter rose petals to mask the inevitable odors. The audience is required to applaud not just Nero's artistic performances, but his digestive achievements as well. These toilet spectacles become so popular among certain segments of Roman society that private citizens begin hosting their own versions. Wealthy merchants and minor nobles compete to create the most elaborate bathroom entertainment, leading to what historians later call the toilet theater craze of 64 AD. The practice becomes so widespread that the Roman Senate actually considers legislation to regulate private toilet performances, fearing they're becoming a threat to public morality. The end comes suddenly and violently. When Nero's reign collapses in 68 AD, one of the first acts of his successors is to demolish the imperial toilet theaters and ban public bathroom audiences. But the damage is already done. The precedent has been set, and the concept of toilet-based royal power has taken root in the collective imagination of European nobility. Fast forward 3 centuries, and we find ourselves in the court of Constantine, the first Christian emperor of Rome. You might expect that converting to Christianity would bring more modest bathroom practices, but you'd be wrong. Constantine becomes convinced that his digestive health is directly connected to his spiritual state, leading to the development of what can only be described as religious toilet rituals. Constantine's bathroom routine begins each morning with prayers to ensure proper elimination, continues with readings from Christian texts during the actual process, and concludes with thanksgiving ceremonies for successful completion. Palace bishops are assigned to bless his toilet paper, and holy water is used to consecrate his chamber pot. The emperor genuinely believes that his bowel movements are a form of divine communication, interpreting different digestive experiences as messages from God about how to rule the empire. This fusion of religion and bathroom habits creates some of the most bizarre scenes in early Christian history. Important theological debates take place in the imperial bathroom, with Constantine making doctrinal decisions while sitting on his consecrated toilet. The famous Council of Nicaea, which established fundamental, was allegedly planned during one of Constantine's extended bathroom sessions, with bishops taking turns kneeling beside his toilet to discuss the nature of the Trinity. The Christian toilet empire reaches its peak when Constantine commissions the construction of the Hagia Sophia's bathroom, a magnificent chamber designed to reflect the glory of God through perfect plumbing. The toilet itself is crafted from marble quarried from holy sites. The walls are decorated with mosaics depicting biblical scenes of purification, and the entire room is designed to echo with the sound of flowing water, which Constantine believes represents the Holy Spirit. As we leave ancient Rome and prepare to journey into medieval Europe, we carry with us the disturbing knowledge that the basic human need for bathroom privacy was transformed by imperial power into something far more complex and troubling. The Romans didn't just use toilets. They weaponized them, politicized them, and ultimately turned them into instruments of control that would influence royal behavior for centuries to come. But if you think Roman toilet practices were extreme, wait until you discover what medieval kings did with chamber pots and how Renaissance monarchs turned bathroom etiquette into a deadly serious diplomatic protocol. The journey into royal bathroom secrets has only just begun, and the most shocking revelations are still ahead. The medieval period brought with it a revolution in royal bathroom practices that would make even the Romans blush. As Europe emerged from the Dark Ages, feudal lords and kings discovered that controlling access to basic sanitation could be just as powerful as controlling armies or treasuries. But it was in the misty highlands of Scotland where this concept reached its most terrifying extreme. Malcolm III of Scotland, known as Malcolm Canmore, ruled from 1058 to 1093, and possessed what contemporary chroniclers diplomatically called peculiar habits regarding his personal necessities. What they were too polite to describe in detail was Malcolm's invention of what we might call siege toilet warfare. The practice of using bathroom access as a tool of political negotiation and prisoner interrogation. Malcolm's castle at Dunfermline contained a series of specially designed chambers where captured enemies and uncooperative nobles were confined with limited access to toilet facilities. The psychological torture was exquisite in its simplicity. Prisoners were given normal amounts of food and water, but bathroom breaks were granted only when Malcolm himself decided they had provided satisfactory information or agreed to his political demands. One particularly disturbing account comes from the chronicle of a captured Norse raider who spent 3 weeks in Malcolm's persuasion chambers. The Viking warrior, who had presumably faced death in battle without flinching, was reduced to begging for toilet access within days. His detailed confession, extracted between desperate pleas for relief, provided Malcolm with crucial intelligence about Norse invasion plans and led to several successful defensive campaigns. But Malcolm's toilet torture wasn't limited to foreign enemies. Scottish nobles who opposed his policies found themselves invited to extended castle visits, where bathroom access became increasingly restricted. The king would host a elaborate feast with copious amounts of ale and wine, then engage his guests in lengthy political discussions while denying them opportunities to relieve themselves. By the end of these sessions, even the most stubborn lords were willing to agree to almost any terms Malcolm proposed. The practice became so notorious that Scottish nobles began traveling with their own portable toilet equipment, leading to the development of the first known luxury chamber pots designed for political protection. These ornate vessels, crafted from precious metals and decorated with clan symbols, served as both status symbols and practical tools for maintaining dignity during Malcolm's psychological warfare sessions. The most horrifying aspect of Malcolm's toilet tactics was how they affected his own family. Court records suggest that he used similar methods to control his wives and children, creating an atmosphere of constant anxiety around the most basic bodily functions. His queen, Margaret, later canonized as Saint Margaret of Scotland, reportedly developed severe digestive problems that contemporary physicians attributed to the stress of living under her husband's bathroom-based control system. The psychological damage extended to Malcolm's children, who grew up associating toilet access with power and submission. When his son David the Fifth eventually became king, he initially continued his father's practices, but quickly discovered that the system had created a generation of Scottish nobles who were either psychologically traumatized or had developed elaborate counter-strategies to avoid bathroom-based manipulation. As news of Scottish toilet warfare spread throughout medieval Europe, other monarchs began experimenting with their own variations. The most creative adaptation came from Henry I of England, who ruled from 1100 to 1135, and faced the challenge of managing Norman nobles who were constantly plotting against his authority. Henry's solution was elegantly simple. He made bathroom access a privilege that had to be earned through loyal service. Henry's court operated on a complex hierarchy of toilet privileges that made the Roman system look egalitarian by comparison. At the bottom were ordinary servants who were allowed to use basic outdoor facilities at designated times. Minor nobles had access to simple indoor chamber pots, but only during specific hours and under supervision. Higher-ranking courtiers could use more elaborate facilities with some privacy, while the king's inner circle enjoyed the ultimate luxury of heated toilet chambers with scented water and soft linens. But the real genius of Henry's system wasn't in the gradations of luxury. It was in how bathroom privileges could be instantly revoked as punishment for disloyalty. A duke who had enjoyed years of comfortable toilet access could find himself reduced to outdoor facilities overnight if Henry suspected betrayal. The psychological impact was devastating, as nobles who had grown accustomed to privacy and comfort were suddenly exposed to public humiliation in their most vulnerable moments. The system created an atmosphere of constant anxiety where courtiers monitored each other's bathroom privileges as indicators of royal favor. A nobleman's status could be measured not by his titles or lands, but by the quality of his assigned toilet facilities. Palace gossip focused as much on who had been granted heated chamber pot access as on political appointments or military campaigns. Henry's toilet hierarchy became so elaborate that he employed special servants whose only job was managing bathroom privileges and monitoring usage patterns. These privy controllers wielded enormous behind-the-scenes power, as they could influence a noble's access to facilities and report suspicious bathroom behavior to the king. Their detailed logs, discovered centuries later in royal archives, provide a disturbing window into how biological functions became tools of political control. The most chilling entries describe how Henry used toilet deprivation as a form of execution that left no obvious evidence of murder. Prisoners could be slowly killed through carefully managed dehydration and infection. with their deaths appearing natural to outside observers. The technique was so subtle that it took modern forensic analysis of medieval remains to confirm that several mysterious deaths in Henry's court were actually the result of systematic bathroom abuse. The practice reached new heights of sophistication under Louis VII of France, who ruled from 1137 to 1180 and transformed bathroom etiquette into a diplomatic art form. Louis understood that foreign ambassadors and visiting nobles could be evaluated and manipulated based on their reactions to carefully orchestrated toilet situations. His court developed elaborate protocols that used bathroom arrangements to test the character and intentions of guests. Visiting dignitaries found themselves subjected to what appeared to be generous hospitality, but was actually a complex series of bathroom-based psychological tests. The quality and location of their assigned toilet facilities sent carefully coded messages about their perceived importance, while their reactions to various bathroom scenarios provided Louis with valuable intelligence about their personalities and political leanings. The most famous example involved the Holy Roman Emperor Conrad III, who visited Louis's court in 1147 to discuss the Second Crusade. Louis arranged for Conrad to be given increasingly luxurious bathroom facilities over the course of his visit, while secretly observing how the emperor responded to each upgrade. Conrad's growing comfort with French toilet luxury convinced Louis that the emperor could be trusted with important military secrets, leading to crucial cooperation during the Crusade. But Louis's bathroom diplomacy could also be used to insult and intimidate. When English ambassadors arrived to negotiate a marriage alliance, they were deliberately given inferior toilet facilities and subjected to long delays in bathroom access. The message was clear. France considered England a lesser power not worthy of proper sanitary courtesy. The diplomatic incident that resulted from this toilet slight contributed to tensions that would eventually lead to centuries of warfare between the two kingdoms. The French court's obsession with bathroom etiquette created a parallel world where toilet protocols became as important as military strategy or economic policy. Courtiers spent enormous amounts of time and money ensuring they understood the latest bathroom fashions and could navigate the complex social hierarchies that governed toilet access. The wrong choice of chamber pot decoration or an inappropriate bathroom gesture could end a political career or even result in exile from court. The system became so complex that Louis commissioned the first known manual of royal bathroom etiquette, a secret document that outlined proper toilet behavior for different ranks of nobility. The manual, written in coded language to prevent its contents from becoming public knowledge, provided detailed instructions on everything from proper sitting posture to appropriate conversation topics for different types of bathroom encounters. Copies were restricted to the highest levels of the court, and possession of the manual by unauthorized persons was considered treason. As medieval bathroom politics reached new levels of sophistication, they began to influence architecture and urban planning throughout Europe. Castles were designed with toilet facilities that could be used as defensive positions during sieges, with special chambers that allowed defenders to continue fighting while attending to bodily functions. The famous murder holes found in many medieval fortifications were often positioned to allow defenders to relieve themselves on attacking enemies, adding psychological warfare to military strategy. The practice of toilet-based intimidation spread beyond royal courts to influence merchant guilds, religious orders, and even peasant communities. The concept that bathroom access could be used as a tool of social control became so ingrained in medieval thinking that it shaped everything from monastery designs to marriage negotiations. Young nobles were taught that mastering bathroom politics was as important as learning swordplay or courtly dance. But perhaps the most disturbing legacy of medieval toilet culture was how it transformed the relationship between rulers and subjects. The basic human need for sanitation became weaponized in ways that made traditional forms of oppression seem almost benevolent by comparison. When kings could control not just what their subjects did, but when and how they could perform the most basic bodily functions, the very concept of human dignity underwent a fundamental change that would echo through centuries of European history. The transformation of royal bathroom culture reached its absolute pinnacle during the Renaissance when Italian city-states turned toilet etiquette into an art form that would make medieval practices look primitive by comparison. But it was in the glittering palaces of Florence where this obsession took its most bizarre and deadly turn. Lorenzo de' Medici, known as Lorenzo the Magnificent, ruled Florence from 1469 to 1492, and possessed what his contemporary biographers called an extraordinary devotion to the perfection of all courtly arts. What they failed to mention was that Lorenzo's definition of courtly arts included the elaborate choreography of royal bathroom rituals that consumed hours of each day and required the services of dozens of specially trained attendants. Lorenzo's morning toilet routine began before dawn with a procession of servants carrying heated towels, scented oils, and golden implements whose purposes were so specialized that each required years of training to master properly. The entire process took place in a marble chamber designed by Brunelleschi himself, where every surface was carved with allegorical scenes depicting the triumph of civilization over base human nature. The irony was lost on no one except Lorenzo himself, but the true genius of Lorenzo's system wasn't in its luxury. It was in how he used these elaborate bathroom rituals to conduct the real business of ruling Florence. While pretending to focus on his personal hygiene, Lorenzo would listen to reports from spies, negotiate business deals with merchant princes, and make decisions that affected thousands of lives. The apparent frivolity of his bathroom obsession provided perfect cover for political machinations that his enemies never suspected. The most disturbing aspect was how Lorenzo trained his children in these practices from his sons were taught that every bathroom visit was an opportunity to gather intelligence, test loyalties, or send coded messages to allies. His daughters learned to use toilet etiquette as a weapon of social warfare, capable of destroying rivals through subtle humiliations involving chamber pot protocols that could ruin reputations without leaving obvious evidence of malice. The Medici bathroom empire reached its peak when Lorenzo commissioned a series of frescoes depicting famous historical figures in various states of toilet-related activity. These masterpieces, painted by artists whose names are still celebrated today, transformed bodily functions into high art, while simultaneously creating a permanent record of Lorenzo's twisted priorities. The frescoes were so explicit that they were sealed behind false walls within decades of their completion, hidden away like pornographic secrets in one of Europe's most... The psychological impact on Florence's artistic community was profound and disturbing. Painters, sculptors, and poets found themselves competing for commissions that required them to glorify and aestheticize human waste in ways that violated their artistic sensibilities while advancing their careers. The resulting works, many of which survive in private collections today, represent some of the most technically accomplished yet morally corrupted art in human history. When Lorenzo's practices became known to other Italian city-states, they sparked what historians now call the toilet wars of the Renaissance, a period of escalating bathroom-based competition that consumed enormous resources and ultimately contributed to Italy's political fragment. Venice responded by constructing floating toilet palaces that could be moved around the lagoon for maximum psychological impact during diplomatic negotiations. Milan developed mechanical toilet devices powered by elaborate clockwork mechanisms that demonstrated technological superiority while handling basic bodily functions. The most creative response came from the Papal States, where Pope Alexander VI commissioned a series of sacred toilet chambers that combined religious ritual with bathroom function, in ways that scandalized even Renaissance standards of corruption. These holy toilets, blessed by specially appointed bishops and decorated with religious artwork, were designed to demonstrate that even the most basic human activities could be elevated to divine status through proper ecclesiastical attention. The Vatican's toilet project created a theological crisis that divided the Catholic Church for decades. Progressive clergy argued that embracing all aspects of human experience, including bathroom functions, brought believers closer to understanding God's creation in its entirety. Conservative factions maintained that such practices represented a dangerous corruption of sacred spaces and violated fundamental principles of spiritual purity. The debate became so heated that it contributed to the Protestant Reformation, as reformers pointed to papal toilet obsessions as evidence of Catholic moral decay. As Renaissance bathroom culture spread beyond Italy, it underwent fascinating mutations that reflected different national characters and political systems. The French naturally transformed it into an elaborate system of romantic intrigue where toilet encounters became opportunities for clandestine love affairs and sophisticated seduction. French nobles developed a coded language of bathroom gestures that allowed them to conduct complex romantic negotiations while maintaining the appearance of proper decorum. The most famous example involved Catherine de' Medici, who brought Italian toilet sophistication to the French court when she married Henry II in 1533. Catherine's bathroom innovations included hidden compartments in toilet facilities where lovers could meet secretly, perfumed chamber pots that served as vehicles for delivering romantic messages, and elaborate toilet ceremonies that functioned as cover for political conspiracies. Her influence transformed the French court into a hotbed of bathroom-based intrigue that would define European royal culture for centuries. The Spanish approach was characteristically different, focusing on toilet practices as demonstrations of imperial power and religious devotion. Spanish monarchs developed bathroom rituals that incorporated elements of both Moorish luxury and Catholic piety, creating hybrid toilet ceremonies that reflected the complex cultural synthesis of post-Reconquista Spain. These rituals became so elaborate that they required their own specialized priesthood of bathroom attendants who took vows of secrecy and devoted their lives to perfecting the spiritual aspects of royal elimination. Philip II of Spain, who ruled from 1556 to 1598, transformed his toilet practices into expressions of his divine right to rule over the largest empire in human history. His bathroom routine included prayers in multiple languages, readings from religious texts, and ceremonial offerings that were supposed to ensure the continued prosperity of Spanish territories from Mexico to the Philippines. The entire process took place in a chamber decorated with maps of the Spanish Empire, where Philip could literally survey his global dominions while attending to his most private needs. The psychological impact on Spanish court culture was profound. Nobles competed to demonstrate their own piety through increasingly elaborate toilet devotions, creating a parallel religious hierarchy based on bathroom practices rather than traditional ecclesiastical ranks. The Spanish Inquisition even developed special procedures for investigating heretical toilet behavior, as deviations from proper bathroom protocols were considered evidence of secret Protestant sympathies or crypto-Islamic practices. But it was in the German-speaking territories of the Holy Roman Empire where Renaissance toilet culture reached its most technically sophisticated and politically dangerous form. German princes, inspired by the mechanical innovations of the period, began commissioning elaborate toilet devices that combined engineering prowess with political symbolism, in ways that amazed and terrified their contemporaries. The most famous example was created for Emperor Maximilian I, who ruled from 1493 to 1519, and commissioned a mechanical toilet throne that incorporated clockwork figures representing the various territories under his rule. As the emperor conducted his business, the mechanical figures would perform elaborate dances and ceremonial gestures that reinforced his authority over the complex patchwork of German principalities, duchies, and free cities that made up the Holy Roman Empire. The engineering challenges involved in creating these mechanical toilet systems pushed Renaissance technology to its limits. Master craftsmen who normally built church organs and astronomical instruments found themselves designing gear systems and hydraulic mechanisms to power imperial bathroom entertainment. The results were marvels of engineering that combined practical function with political theater in ways that had never been attempted before. The political implications were equally complex. When foreign ambassadors witnessed these mechanical toilet displays, they understood immediately that they were seeing demonstrations of technological and organizational capabilities that extended far beyond bathroom facilities. A ruler who could commission and operate such sophisticated toilet machinery obviously possessed the resources and expertise to field advanced military equipment and coordinate complex administrative systems. The arms race and toilet technology that resulted from these demonstrations consumed enormous resources throughout the German territories. Minor princes bankrupted themselves commissioning toilet devices designed to match or exceed imperial standards, while their subjects suffered under increasingly heavy taxes levied to fund bathroom-based prestige projects. The Holy Roman Empire became a patchwork of competing toilet technologies, each representing different approaches to combining mechanical innovation with political authority. The most tragic casualties of this toilet arms race were the craftsmen and engineers who devoted their lives to perfecting these systems. Many of the period's greatest technical minds spent decades working on problems related to royal bathroom function, creating innovations that could have revolutionized agriculture, transportation, or military technology, but were instead applied to the challenges of mechanical toilet entertainment. Their detailed technical drawings, preserved in various archives, reveal the extraordinary ingenuity that was poured into solving problems that no rational society should have considered worthy of attention. The German toilet empire reached its peak under Emperor Charles V, who ruled from 1519 to 1556 and controlled territories spanning from Spain to Austria to the New World. Charles commissioned a portable toilet system that could be transported with his court as he traveled throughout his vast domains, ensuring that he could maintain imperial toilet standards regardless of location. The logistics involved in moving this system required a specialized transportation corps and advanced teams that prepared toilet facilities in cities throughout Europe. The portable imperial toilet became a symbol of Spanish Habsburg power that impressed and intimidated subjects throughout Charles's empire. When the emperor's toilet convoy arrived in a city, local authorities understood that they were witnessing a demonstration of organizational capabilities that could just as easily be applied to military campaigns or administrative control. The message was clear. A ruler who could coordinate such complex toilet logistics possessed the power to coordinate anything. But the most disturbing aspect of Charles's toilet empire was how it affected the people who operated it. The servants, craftsmen, and officials who devoted their careers to imperial bathroom service developed a warped perspective on human dignity and social hierarchy that reflected the fundamental corruption of a system that treated bodily functions as expressions of political power. Their memoirs and correspondence, hidden away in archives for centuries, reveal the psychological damage inflicted on people who spent their lives serving a system that confused basic human needs with imperial grandeur. As Renaissance toilet culture reached its peak of sophistication and absurdity, it began to generate the contradictions that would eventually destroy it. The enormous resources devoted to bathroom-based political theater diverted attention and funding from genuine challenges facing Europe. The psychological damage inflicted on both rulers and subjects created cultural pathologies that would influence European politics for generations. And the fundamental confusion between human dignity and political power, embedded in these practices, helped create the authoritarian mindsets that would plague European history well into the modern era. The Renaissance toilet empire was ultimately unsustainable, but its collapse would not come from rational recognition of its absurdities. Instead, it would require external shocks and internal contradictions that would transform European society in ways that no one could have predicted. The most dramatic of these transformations was already brewing in the courts of France, where royal bathroom practices were about to evolve into something even more extreme and ultimately more destructive than anything Renaissance Italy or Habsburg Spain had imagined. The transformation we're about to witness represents the absolute pinnacle of royal bathroom obsession, where French monarchs turned basic human functions into theatrical performances that would make Renaissance princes look like amateurs. But what happened next in the halls of Versailles wasn't just eccentric behavior. It was the birth of a system so psychologically twisted that it would ultimately contribute to the downfall of the monarchy itself. Louis XIV, the Sun King who ruled France from 1643 to 1715, inherited more than just a throne from his predecessors. He inherited their bathroom neuroses and amplified them into something approaching madness. But where previous monarchs had used toilet practices for political manipulation or personal gratification, Louis transformed them into a cornerstone of absolute royal authority that would define European court culture for over a century. The mourning ritual known as the lever du roi has been romanticized by historians as an elegant ceremony where French nobles competed for the honor of helping their king dress. What they rarely mention is that this ceremony centered around Louis's elaborate bathroom routine, which could last up to 4 hours and involved more than 50 specialized attendants, performing functions so specific that some courtiers spent their entire careers mastering a single gesture related to royal elimination. Picture this scene: the most powerful man in Europe, seated on a toilet that cost more than most people's homes, surrounded by dukes and princes who had traveled hundreds of miles for the privilege of watching him defecate. These were men who commanded armies, governed provinces, and traced their bloodlines back to Charlemagne. Yet here they stood competing for positions that allowed them closer proximity to their king's most intimate bodily functions. The hierarchy surrounding Louis's bathroom routine was more complex than the feudal system itself. The Duc de Bourgogne held the supreme honor of presenting the royal toilet paper, a position that came with its own coat of arms and hereditary privileges. The Comte de Toulouse was responsible for adjusting the king's position during particularly difficult eliminations, while the Prince de Condé managed the elaborate system of mirrors that allowed Louis to observe his own process from multiple angles. But the true genius of Louis's system wasn't in its complexity. It was in how he used these bathroom ceremonies to destroy the independence and dignity of the French nobility. By forcing the most powerful men in France to participate in rituals centered around his bodily functions, Louis created a psychological dependency that went far beyond traditional feudalism. These nobles didn't just serve their king. They were psychologically bonded to him through shared participation in activities so degrading that they could never admit to outsiders what their court service actually involved. The most disturbing aspect was how thoroughly the nobility embraced their roles in these ceremonies. Contemporary letters between French aristocrats reveal men who genuinely believed that proximity to the king's toilet granted them spiritual and political insights unavailable to less privileged courtiers. They developed elaborate theories about the connection between royal digestive patterns and divine will, creating a pseudo-religious framework that justified their participation in what was essentially organized degradation. The Marquise de Maintenon, Louis's secret wife, left behind memoirs that provide horrifying insights into how these bathroom rituals affected the women of Versailles. Female courtiers were excluded from the king's morning toilet ceremony, but they developed their own parallel system centered around interpreting and responding to the outcomes of royal elimination. Court ladies spent hours analyzing the king's mood after his bathroom sessions, adjusting their behavior and political strategies based on subtle signs that indicated whether his morning constitution had been satisfactory. The psychological pressure on everyone involved was immense. Palace physicians were required to monitor and optimize the king's digestive health using techniques that combined medieval superstition with Renaissance pseudoscience. They prescribed elaborate diets, administered exotic medications, and performed procedures that were essentially ritualized torture, designed to ensure that Louis's bathroom performances met the expectations of his audience. The ripple effects extended throughout French society as provincial nobles attempted to replicate Versailles bathroom culture in their own estates. Local aristocrats commissioned miniature versions of the royal toilet ceremonies, complete with their own hierarchies of bathroom attendants and elaborate protocols for managing peasant access to sanitation facilities. The result was a nationwide system where bathroom privileges became expressions of social status and political power at every level of society. The economic impact was staggering. The French treasury spent enormous sums on bathroom-related expenses that ranged from the construction of elaborate toilet facilities to the salaries of specialized attendants whose only job was managing royal excrement. These costs were carefully hidden in palace budgets under euphemistic categories, but financial records reveal that bathroom-related expenses consumed a significant portion of the royal household's annual budget. International visitors to Versailles struggled to understand what they were witnessing. foreign ambassadors wrote confused reports to their home governments, describing ceremonies that seemed to combine religious ritual, political theater, and scatological obsession in ways that defied rational explanation. The Spanish ambassador's dispatches from 1685 describe his horror at being expected to participate in discussions of military strategy while Louis conducted his morning elimination routine. The most tragic victims of this system were the servants whose lives were consumed by its demands. Palace records revealed the existence of an entire underground economy of bathroom-related labor that employed hundreds of people in jobs so specialized and degrading that they developed their own secret languages and cultural practices. These workers, known euphemistically as chamber specialists, formed closed communities within Versailles where they could process the psychological trauma of their daily experiences. The medical consequences were equally disturbing. Louis's obsession with public elimination created digestive problems that required increasingly invasive treatments from court physicians. His bathroom routine became a vicious cycle where performance anxiety about public defecation created genuine health issues that then required more elaborate medical interventions, which in turn generated more anxiety about performing successfully in front of his noble audience. The system reached its most extreme form during Louis's later years when advancing age and declining health made his bathroom performances increasingly unreliable. Palace protocols developed elaborate contingency plans for managing situations where the king's elimination didn't proceed according to schedule, including backup entertainment designed to keep the noble audience occupied during extended delays. The psychological damage extended to Louis himself, who became genuinely convinced that his bathroom performances were expressions of divine authority that maintained the natural order of French society. His private correspondence reveals a man who believed that any disruption to his toilet routine could trigger political chaos or military disasters throughout his empire. This delusion created a feedback loop where his obsession with bathroom control intensified his need for more elaborate ceremonies to demonstrate that control. When Louis XIV finally died in 1715, the French nobility faced a crisis of identity that went far beyond normal succession politics. Generations of aristocrats had structured their entire lives around participation in royal bathroom rituals, and suddenly the center of their universe had vanished. The resulting psychological vacuum contributed to the political instability that would eventually lead to revolution. But Louis XIV's toilet empire didn't die with him. It evolved into something even more destructive under his successors. Louis XV, who ruled from 1715 to 1774, inherited not just the throne but his predecessor's bathroom obsessions, which he transformed into tools of sexual manipulation and political control that would scandalize Europe and ultimately help destroy the monarchy's moral authority. Louis XV's innovations centered around the integration of royal bathroom rituals with his notorious sexual appetites. The king's toilet ceremonies became opportunities for evaluating and selecting new mistresses, with female courtiers competing for positions that allowed them to assist with his intimate needs. These arrangements created a parallel power structure where sexual access to the king was mediated through participation in increasingly degrading bathroom activities. The most famous example involved Madame de Pompadour, who secured her position as royal mistress by demonstrating exceptional skill in managing the king's complex digestive schedule and bathroom requirements. Her rise to power created a new model for ambitious women at court, who understood that political influence required mastery of intimate bodily functions, as much as traditional feminine accomplishments like music or conversation. The system became so corrupt that it attracted the attention of international observers who reported back to their governments about the French court's descent into practices that combined political intrigue with sexual perversion and scatological obsession. The Venetian ambassador's secret dispatches from 1745 describe ceremonies that violated both contemporary standards of decency and basic principles of human dignity. The economic costs of Louis XV's bathroom empire dwarfed even his predecessor's expenses. The king commissioned a series of private toilet chambers designed for intimate encounters that combined luxury accommodations with specialized equipment for managing the intersection of sexual activity and bodily functions. These facilities, hidden throughout Versailles and the king's other residences, required constant maintenance by servants who were sworn to secrecy about their activities. The most disturbing development was the creation of what court insiders called toilet schools, where young women from aristocratic families were trained in the specialized skills required to assist with royal bathroom activities. These institutions, operating under the cover of traditional finishing schools, provided education and techniques that prepared their graduates for careers that combined elements of nursing, prostitution, and psychological manipulation. The psychological impact on the students was devastating. Letters discovered in convent archives reveal young women who suffered complete psychological breakdowns after exposure to training regimens that systematically destroyed their sense of personal dignity and moral boundaries. Many of these women spent the rest of their lives in religious institutions, unable to function in normal society after their experiences in the royal toilet system. The international scandal reached its peak when foreign princesses began refusing marriage alliances with French royalty due to reports about the bathroom-related obligations expected of royal wives. The imperial court in Vienna circulated secret warnings about French toilet practices that portrayed them as evidence of moral corruption that threatened the entire European aristocratic system. The most tragic aspect of Louis XV's reign was how his bathroom obsessions intersected with genuine political crises that required serious attention. While the king devoted hours each day to elaborate toilet ceremonies and sexual bathroom encounters, France faced mounting economic problems, military defeats, and social unrest that received inadequate attention from royal administrators who were preoccupied with managing their sovereign's intimate needs. The 7 Years' War, which devastated French finances and cost the monarchy its North American empire, was reportedly planned and managed through a series of meetings held in the king's private toilet chambers. Military commanders and finance ministers were forced to discuss strategy and policy while participating in activities that compromised their ability to provide honest advice or maintain professional objectivity. The corruption spread throughout the French government as officials at every level adopted bathroom-based power relationships modeled on Versailles practices. Provincial administrators used toilet access as tools for managing local politics, while military officers incorporated bathroom hierarchies into army discipline systems. The result was a government structure where competence and merit were subordinated to willingness to participate in degrading intimate activities. By the time Louis XVI inherited the throne in 1774, the French monarchy's bathroom obsessions had created psychological, economic, and political problems that made effective governance nearly impossible. The new king, who was reportedly disgusted by his predecessor's practices, attempted to reform the system but discovered that centuries of toilet-based court culture had created institutional dependencies that couldn't be easily eliminated. The most ironic aspect of this entire saga was how the French Revolution ultimately grew out of the same psychological dynamics that had created the royal bathroom empire. The revolutionary crowds that stormed Versailles were motivated partly by rage at discovering the degrading activities that had consumed the monarchy's attention while ordinary French citizens suffered from poverty and oppression. When revolutionary investigators examined the palace's financial records, they found evidence of the enormous costs associated with royal bathroom practices that helped fuel public anger about aristocratic excess. The detailed inventories of toilet-related expenses became propaganda tools that demonstrated how completely the monarchy had lost touch with the basic needs and values of French society. The executions of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette can be understood partly as public rejections of a political system that had confused personal bodily functions with governmental authority. The guillotine represented not just political justice, but psychological cleansing, a violent attempt to purge French society of the degrading practices that had corrupted its ruling class for over a century. But even as the French Revolution destroyed the Bourbon monarchy, the psychological patterns established by centuries of royal bathroom obsession continued to influence European culture in ways that extended far beyond palace walls. The fundamental confusion between power and degradation, between authority and intimate control, had become embedded in European consciousness so deeply that it would continue to manifest in new forms throughout the modern era. The story of royal toilet practices reveals something profound about the relationship between power and human dignity that extends far beyond the specific historical examples we've examined. When basic biological functions become tools of political control, the resulting corruption affects not just the immediate participants, but entire civilizations in ways that can persist for generations. As we prepare to examine the final chapters of this dark saga, we must confront the uncomfortable truth that the psychological patterns established by centuries of royal bathroom obsession didn't disappear with the fall of the old monarchies. Instead, they evolved into new forms that continue to influence contemporary politics, social relationships, and cultural practices in ways that most people never recognize or acknowledge. The ultimate lesson of royalty's disgusting toilet secrets isn't just about the absurd behavior of long-dead kings and queens. It's about the eternal human tendency to use control over basic needs as a foundation for illegitimate authority. Understanding these historical patterns helps us recognize similar dynamics in our own time and resist the temptation to mistake degradation for dignity or confusion for civilization. The final chapter of royal bathroom obsession didn't end with the French Revolution. It mutated into something even more insidious that would infect the remaining European monarchies and create new forms of degradation that make Versailles look restrained by comparison. What emerged in the 19th century was a system so psychologically twisted that it would take 2 world wars to finally break its hold on European consciousness. Queen Victoria, who ruled Britain from 1837 to 1901, inherited more than just an empire. She inherited centuries of accumulated royal bathroom neuroses that she transformed into the foundation of what historians politely call Victorian morality. But the reality behind her famous prudishness was far more disturbing than anyone dared acknowledge. Victoria's obsession with controlling every aspect of her subjects' private lives grew directly from her own elaborate system of toilet-based power relationships that made Louis XIV's practices seem almost democratic. The Victorian toilet empire operated through a network of bathroom spies and intimate surveillance that extended from Buckingham Palace into the homes of ordinary British citizens. Victoria genuinely believed that monitoring her subjects' bathroom habits was essential to maintaining imperial order, leading to the creation of sanitation inspectors whose real job was gathering intelligence about private family dynamics through analysis of household waste patterns. But perhaps most tragically, Victoria's system created the psychological foundation for the authoritarian movements that would plague the 20th century. The confusion between intimate control and legitimate authority that began with Roman toilet courts reached its logical conclusion in regimes that understood instinctively how to use basic human needs as weapons of mass psychological destruction. The story of royal toilet practices is ultimately a warning about what happens when we allow power to corrupt our most fundamental human experiences. Every time we witness authority figures using control over basic needs to establish dominance, we're seeing echoes of the same psychological patterns that turned European palaces into chambers of organized degradation. The gilded chamber pots have been melted down, the elaborate toilet ceremonies have been forgotten, but the human capacity for transforming necessity into tyranny remains as dangerous today as it was in the courts of mad emperors and obsessed kings. The real secret hidden behind all those golden thrones wasn't just about royal waste. It was about the waste of human dignity that occurs whenever we mistake degradation for civilization. Remember that the next time someone tries to convince you that controlling your most private moments is somehow connected to their right to rule over your public life. The ghosts of 1,000 royal toilets whisper the same eternal warning. Power that seeks to control your bathroom seeks to control your soul.